What is going on, guys? So today we are going to be messing with Turdzilla here, and this car has a wiring mess for a sound system. So it has some Pioneer radio head unit, which is not too bad. It's a little old, but that's not the bad part. It has the Mach 460 speakers in it, but it literally has no amplifier. There's wiring running everywhere. I mean, just check this out. I mean, John just pulled the radio out, and that's what we got. I'm telling you, there is no amplifier in this thing.
This is a hack special. As an electrician, I don't even know what to say.
I mean, like, I'm serious by there's no amplifier back here. They just took out the amps. So, like, dude.
Oh, buddy.
So we went to Walmart, picked up some wiring stuff. Right. And we have a
good electrical tape.
We have an Alpine, what do you call it? Amplifier?
You get a 4-channel amplifier, so that way he can drive his factory speakers with the 4-channel, as well as the sub. It doesn't push out very many RMS nor peak power. But it's just something to get him by so we can get rid of this electrical freaking nightmare. So, yeah. So just as a future reference, anybody that watches this video, don't do this. If you're like, hey, we're gonna cut the factory harness, you really couldn't just spend the $5 and just, you know, get the little adapter piece to hook up a stereo nicely so you don't end up with this electrical hazard. Look at this.
I told you, dude. I told you it was messed up.
Tape together wiring. Look at all these wonderful connections.
Alright, well, we're gonna get into it.
This is gonna take a while. I'm gonna get this shit right and it's gonna look nice. So here's the deal on powder. So rule of thumbs. The reason why in the first place that when you buy a kit like this from Walmart or any other audio manufacturer out there, whether you go to your local place or not, they actually sell you a fine stranded wire. And the reason why that is direct current likes fine stranded wire. Also known as stranded in the electrical field as far as residential, commercial, and industrial applications, compared to your like standard house, which is actually mostly solid wire. It has everything to do with the ampacity. So what we wanted to do is we took a look online, because this is obviously a used amp. Okay, so it came out of the other car, whatever. 4-channel, and then you have to look at what the wattage is as far as the amp's concerned and the amperage drop, and then you size accordingly. So if you're using a smaller amp like this one, once I looked it up, I actually found that the recommended gauge for this kit actually was an 8-gauge kit. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that when Andrew has a voltage drop of over 20 feet, that he was good to go on the wire size. So usually when you do a stereo like this, you always want to upsize a gauge compared to the recommended. That way you know that you're totally solid in case it's a super hot day, because heat and electrical wire don't mix. It raises the resistivity factor, and then it kind of just goes downhill from there. So you always know that you'll always be good if you go one size larger, and that's what we did. So in case either A, he upgrades the amp, or B, just for longevity purposes, one size larger is not going to kill you. The other reason why I bought this this kit here usually is because it comes with all the ground wires and then the left and right audio cables that you're going to need, which is pretty nice, and it even comes with a signal wire as well. So for I think what, 30 bucks, you pretty much get everything you would need almost, besides the tools and some etc. pieces to actually install one of these. So it actually makes it pretty easy. So our plan is we are going to, since this is a 4-channel amp, A, wire this thing correctly, because as you can see this thing is a disaster from when we cut it out of the other car. But B, we want to make sure that our channels are right. So we're going to come from the head unit with multiple RCAs and then tag this amp so that way we can bypass that wiring fucking disaster that's currently in that car. So bear with us a little bit, because it's going to kind of be long and drawn out, but I'm going to give you some electrical pointers as we go with how to strip this wire properly to get the best threads, and to crimp all this stuff down with pressure crimps. Alright, John is running the power wire and up and into the car. I also pulled the center console out because our e-brake is broken on this. So hopefully we can figure out a way to fix that, because it actually pulled out of where it's supposed to bolt to up there. So it's going to be interesting trying to get that to work properly again. Alright, so just a quick update too. I'm running the battery cable in the engine compartment. I can't stress this enough. Do not put your cable next to the frickin' motor. I've seen a lot of people do it. I don't know why they do it, but they do. So don't do it. Also, on a new age Mustang, try and keep them on the driver's side of your main power wires. Do not try and transfer them to the passenger side. You just tend to not have enough cable unless you're going to do a custom job, so I always recommend the driver's side. Take your zip ties, get this nice and mounted up. Obviously, you have a good solid fuse block. Make sure your fuse is appropriate to the size of the amplifier and the type of knees that you're going to need on your amp. I usually put mine up here so that way you can curl them nice around. Wire loves nice bends. Do not be that guy who pinches your wire. Don't do that. I usually route it right in here, come up, and then hit right here. If you actually look, there's actually a grommet for a body harness here. It actually goes to the crash sensor right here, if I'm not mistaken. So I usually take a screwdriver, Phillips, pop on the top. You can come from the side if you want. The top's the most easiest. And then you can actually just take a razor knife and just quickly skim around it. And then you can pop your wire through as you skim in. And then that right here is kind of what it should look like at this point in time. We're gonna get it nice and tucked in right here under the trim piece here and here. But before we do that, we're actually gonna go ahead and start running the RCA cables as well as the signal input. So that way we can run everything nice and bundled up together. If you're running a 4-channel amp, I highly advise you to mark your RCA cables if you're running more than one. Do not get them confused. So usually what I do is I take a zip tie or a piece of electrical tape and I'll tape them in sequence. So let's say cable number 1 has 1 round of tape. Cable number 2 has 2 rounds of tape on each side. And that way you can keep track of them to know which side is going where in case you ever have a problem. So I'll show you more about that here in a little bit. So we're gonna get ramming on this part.
All right, so it is now later after work for me. John managed to get pretty much everything ran and it's pretty much working. We had to swap head units to the, what is it, JVC one that was out of brown car because the Alpine one was a little bit messed up. So yeah, that's pretty much good to go. Just got to
tidy up a bit of wiring. You know what I mean? It didn't help that all the connections were shot. Wiring was taped, and the amp was wired backwards. So there you go. So after fucking around with it for about, I don't know, about an hour and a half, you know what I mean? I got everything figured out. We're just gonna tidy everything up the best we can. Some of the wiring we're just gonna reuse so that way we don't have to rewire everything in this car. And then I got all my cable assemblies routing the RCAs. So it's actually pretty straightforward. Let's just kind of review one more time because it's kind of like one of those things. Just to recap, I got it on the battery here. I got my fuse assembly right here. Always size the fuse properly for the amplifier you're trying to run. So we know we've got a fuse that'll actually support the 40 amps. So we're ready to go there with the cover. Always strap it to the side if you can. Keep it away from the engine and the engine heat the best you can. Don't kink your wires, always run them nice and smooth and flowy. As you can kind of see, everything's kind of nice and just roundabout and tucked away. It'll keep everything running smooth. Like I was suggesting earlier in the post, always run your wires on the driver's side if you can in these cars in particular because they don't give you a whole lot of wire unless you're doing a custom system where you have lengths of wire that you can actually just use no problem. So I always tuck mine up in the dash, come forward, and zip tie them all the way through, and then roll them on the side panel here. And then usually what I do on these kind of cars, if you're going to run it full interiors, I'll actually put it on the back of the rear seat with the one that if you pull the handle, it'll actually come forward, slap it right in the center on the amplifier. And then that fits really nice, and it's real nice and tucked away. You can actually run all your wiring there, and it looks really, really nice and clean. But in this case, Andrew's going to run this on the track. He doesn't need all the rear seats, so we're actually going to tuck it away down in the galley here, as you can probably see. So I'll get all that cleaned up here in just a minute because I just have it out just to test everything and make sure that we were able to reuse the existing wiring that we could, and then rewire all the amplifier and get everything tucked away with the proper terminals. So that's kind of the update right now. We're just going to keep cracking and lacking on it, and we have to fix some wiring, run some butt splices on the other side to kind of tie everything in. And then what we'll do is we'll actually show you the finished product of what it actually looks like when the stereo is actually assembled and the wiring is actually tucked away nice and clean. So something else I want to point out to you guys, if you guys can see it, every time I actually do a butt splice connector here, I'm not using my own personal tools, we're just borrowing these ones, but actually you always strip these about 3/4 inch long and you actually bend them over. And the reason why you do that, especially on these smaller gauge wires in particular where the hairs are really fine, I've noticed that if you bend these over, even in the construction industry where I work in, you get a much nicer connection on stranded wire compared to like, you know, a solid or anything along those lines. and it actually just gets nice and firm in your connector here. So you can just actually just pop it in just like that, and then once you crimp down, and you get a really nice firm solid connection. So anyways, so this is what the finished head unit looks like. I got it all rewired in there and crimped like it's supposed to be. We capped these off, so that's ready to go. I've got my 3 inputs, left, right, front for front and rears, and sub control. And then the radio harness went back in. So now this whole deck assembly should slide in like so. Now it's all cleaned up. And you have to probably work it just a little bit because they always kind of get all the wiring tangled back in there. Just keep it kind of nice and neat and be careful with it. Okay, now that we had to make a radio change because Andrew showed me the wrong spot, we will set this back in here. And it just clicks right in there. And if we had the proper screws, which yours are not.
Alright, so we got it going. We got the sub working. Got some non-copyrighted music playing for all you guys out there. Basically everything's going.